What's going on? It's Justeeni here, and today we're going to be talking about why everyone is playing Polytopia wrong and what should be done about it. So let's just get right into things. So we're going to be talking about why Glory is better than Might, because as we all know, most people as in 99.9% of people play Might. Nobody cares about Glory. Glory stinks, except Glory doesn't stink. It's better than Might, and here is why. So first off, games don't stall out. This is an especially important thing with competitively, but also casually. It's nice when games are expected to end after a certain point, because points can constantly build up, but you might not always be able to advance towards your win condition of capturing the opponent's capital. Sometimes the game can get really locked up, really defensive. It's actually probably a bit more common than you'd think, and it can sometimes hold up tournaments. It's really annoying. It can just be agonizing going through a game that you thought it would only take 30 minutes to an hour, but instead it's taking 3 hours. Kind of sucks. That doesn't happen in Glory, ever, because you just reached the point threshold before then. Glory offers more ways to play the game also. A big thing with Might is you don't especially in FFAs, you don't want to kill your ally to win the game. They're your best buddies the whole game. I see this requested all the time. Can I win without breaking my alliances? Well, in Glory, you can. You can be best friends with everyone. You cannot kill a single unit or capture a single opponent's city and win the game by getting points. Isn't that awesome? Also the game can be balanced more easily, because you just have another metric to balance. You can use points to balance things. A good example, Free Spirit and Meditation, those are notably weak techs, but they have the temples. They're the only tier 2 techs with temples, so you can buff temples as a way to improve those techs, and maybe to nerf some options, maybe markets, for example. Those are very overpowered. You can make it so then markets decrease your amount of points in exchange for the stars. That could be one way to balance that. Or if you think parks are too weak, which I think parks are actually perfectly balanced in Glory, maybe parks can give more points, or if they're too strong, they give less, etc., etc. Basically, it's just another way to balance the game, which is good. And then as a bonus, FFAs are a lot more fun. In Glory, they're just better. I think it's a lot more interesting. Usually, when one person's ahead in a Glory FFA, people are much more incentivized to break alliances with them and start attacking them until they're no longer the leader. Then when someone else gets ahead, everyone's incentivized to attack them. There's a lot more betrayal, a lot more alliance breaking. Gets absolutely wacky, absolutely crazy. It's a great time. FFAs are cool. Now, to provide somewhat of a counter argument, I think it's only fair that we look at why Might is better, because there is a reason why most people play this objectively worse game mode. The main thing is the more straightforward gameplay. Instead of you get to a certain amount of points and everything that you do gives a certain amount of points, that's kind of nerdy and stupid and something like that. Might is very simple. Capture opponent capital, win game. If it's an FFA, capture all opponent capitals, win game. Very simple, very straightforward. It also encourages more aggressive play. One common thing you'll see in Glory games is you can get in the situation where both sides don't interact with each other, because it's more efficient to just get as many points as they can by investing all into parks or techs. Those are usually the ways you gain points really quickly. So they'll just do that instead of training units and interacting with each other, because maybe they can just win the game before the opponent can even punish them. In Might, you have to attack the opponent to win, so it forces you to play a bit more aggressively in that manner. You have to do something about the opponent. Get clickbaited. Glory and Might are both good game modes. They're good in their own respective ways. I do think Glory is underappreciated, but that's not to say that Might is actually objectively worse. I know I said that before. I lied to you guys for the content. But yeah, I think they're both good game modes, but I want to talk about how they can be improved, both Glory and Might. We'll start with Glory. So first off, Glory needs some more customization. Currently, you can only select in like these increments of 5,000 points, which is stupid and dumb. It just leads to a lot of problems. Like, for example, if you're playing like a normal size 1v1, usually 10,000 points is too little. Sometimes the game just ends before it actually gets interesting. But then 15,000 is too much. Usually the game has to drag out really late before that point threshold even becomes a factor. If you could pick something in the middle, like 12,000, that would be perfect. So if you had like a slider that you could adjust in like increments of 1,000 or even 500, that would solve that problem. No matter what map size, player count, map type, whatever you're going for, there's some point threshold that just works for Glory. And when you find that, you have a great time. So this an absolutely necessary feature in my opinion. Also, Glory needs to reward aggressive play, kind of like how Might does. A lot of people enjoy Might because it rewards aggressive play. So I think it makes sense, like, instead of being in those point rush situations where neither player's incentivized to attack, give some point rewards for attacking. Give some points for killing units, so then if one player is more efficient in combat, they're rewarded for it. And give points for sieging the opponent. So if you're the aggressor in a situation, you get an inherent benefit, so you always want to be attacking the opponent. And yeah, I think 25 points per siege is pretty good. It doesn't have to be that. You could also do like 10 points per level of the city, which, I mean, that could also be fine. I worry that it might be exploited in some ways, but you get the idea. Make aggressive play more better and stuff. Yeah. Also buffing temples, please, because even in Glory, like, temples are made to make points. They're made for glory and perfection, but mostly perfection. As you can tell, they suck in Glory. If you play Glory, you usually don't make temples. Parks and just buying techs are better ways of getting points, so I think they should be buffed. And the main thing is temples are so expensive for what they do. I see them as like this long-term generating points over time structure, but they're way too much of an investment for that to make sense. So I think dropping the cost of them to 7 stars, and for forest temples, dropping them to 5 stars makes a lot more sense. And then actually nerfing their initial amount of points to 50 instead of 100 kind of like goes deeper into that role. You could argue maybe like these should cost 10 stars and this should be 8, but still have that initial 100 points. Either one could work. I personally prefer this way of going about it, where temples are really in this specific role that nothing really does so far. It would allow temples to kind of stand out and provide their own weight of like playing the game. And also changing down Glory again. So if you can't read or something, I'll just read the slide verbatim. Rather than having it end immediately when a player reaches the point threshold, it should end after the last player's turn when a player reaches the point threshold, with the player scoring the most points being the winner at that point. So basically, what that means is, like, let's say you have a 2-player Glory game to 10,000 points, and player 1 gets to like 10,500 points. Instead of them just winning the game on the spot, player 2 still gets to take their turn, because, like, say like the game ends, like player 1 reaches the threshold on turn 19. If the game ends right away, player 2 can't play their turn 19. So instead of it just ending right away, player 2 plays their turn 19, and if they can pass player 1, getting past 10,500 points, then they win the game instead. If they can't, then player 1 still wins. So I think this would be a great way to offset host advantage, because that is a problem. It's a problem in Might games as well. I could go on a whole rant about it, but yeah. And then the other one, if there's only one player alive, the game should automatically end. It's kind of straightforward, because when there's only one player left, like, normally what you do is you just sit there and place a bunch of temples and then win the game. This would just be a nice quality of life. It's not like super necessary, but it would be nice. And then this actually suggestion for Might. This isn't needed in Glory, but in Might it definitely is. More ways of breaking stalemates, because a lot of like defensive things in the game are intentionally made weak to like minimize the possibility of stalemates. But like sometimes even in competitive games, you will have instances of like stalemates actually happening. Sometimes even like perfect, like completely unbreakable stalemates. And there definitely could be some more ways of having counterplay. I'd say the main one, having some way of moving through force or just reworking spiritualism, because that's usually the main culprit. The reason why Plant Tree is 5 stars is to be borderline useless, because if it were useful, it would just be a problem for the game, especially Might. Wouldn't be as bad for Glory, but for Might it's a huge problem, and most people play Might. But also, like, having some sort of, like, really tanky unit could also help, because, like, the main, like, setup you have is, like, you plant a bunch of trees, then you use catapults and some knights to basically just clean up everything, and if you're really lucky with map generation, you can even get some bombers in there as a way of preventing cloaks from being a way to break through stalemates, because I already know people are typing in the comments like, cloaks break stalemates. They don't always break stalemates. Sometimes they do, but the existence of bombers can sometimes ruin everything, as bombers do. But if there's just some really tanky unit... Oh, but giants! Well, giants are a finite resource. What if you run out of giants? Then you're screwed. So yeah, there needs to be like some like alternate option that's like tanky enough to break through enemy lines to inevitably win the game. Or just, again, a way of moving through forest. I think this would be a much easier thing. Something like that. Or removing spiritualism outright could also be pretty interesting. So, like, if you're trying to play defensive, especially in the late game, you just have to rely more on the terrain that you have instead of just, hey, I'm going to plant a ton of trees. But spiritualism can be interesting in its own ways other for breaking stalemates, so maybe just some sort of rework would suffice. But now we're going to get to the fun part of the video. So why just stop with Might and Glory? What I mean by this is, those are the only 2 game modes in the game right now. What if that wasn't the case? So let's start with some funny ideas. I came up with a bunch of funny ones because, yeah, you can comment down your own cool, epic, awesome game mode ideas. But here's the first one. Contested territory. Basically, you've got a bunch of tiles in the middle of the map. If you are literate by chance, you can just read what's on the slide. But you can also hear me yap about it. Basically, there's like a bunch of tiles in the middle of the map. Those are your contested territories. If you start your turn with a unit in the contested territory, that means you move a unit in the contested territory, it survives the enemy turn, and it's still there on your next turn. Then you get a point for each unit in a contested territory. And when a player earns their first victory point, or just like when anyone earns a victory point, then the game ends after a certain amount of turns just to prevent things from dragging out too long. At first I was thinking, oh, like first to like 10 points or something wins, but then I realized like, what if like both players make a really good setup to prevent people from getting points? Instead, just like when a point is earned, game ends in a certain amount of turns, so you don't have games dragging out too long. And the player with most victory points at the end wins. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I think it would be pretty fun. Is it inherently balanced? Not really. Host advantage would definitely be a thing, and like some tribes would be better at it than others. But the main thing with these is not like, oh, this is perfectly balanced for competitive play, all that. They're just for fun. Because Polytopia is meant to be fun. You know, I think that is a pretty important thing. Not all of these are like going to be absolutely perfect. Like, let's look at the next one, for example, side quests. I already know what people are going to say, like, I'm OP with this. Because basically the idea is when a player completes a task, the task being like when you like kill 10 enemy units or get a city to level 5 or connect 5 cities to your capital, stuff like that, then the game ends in a certain amount of turns. Again, you can like pick how many turns it is, and then after that point, whoever has the most tasks completed wins. And for like a tiebreaker, I guess, I forgot to write it down here, just whoever completed the first task would win in the instance of a tie. Which, yeah, I know everyone's saying like, oh, I'm OOP, but that's not the point. Like, you can either just like ban IMO if you're playing competitively, or just like if you're playing casually, kind of just have fun anyway. Or just like there could be counterplay. Maybe with certain map conditions, you can find ways to actually beat IMO. Who knows? And then what about some other additions? So instead of just game modes, what if there's some variations of each game mode that you could include to get a little extra spicy. You'll see what I mean in a bit. So let's start with the first one, Head Start. So players start with an additional amount of stars, X ranging from 5 to 25. This also kind of tying a little bit into my rant about tribes having different amounts of starting stars, which is why the wording is like that, having additional starting stars. But yeah, you should watch that video if you haven't already. It'll be linked in the description because it's a good video in my completely biased opinion. But yeah, basically with like this variant, instead of it being its own separate game mode, I don't think it's inherently like interesting enough for that. It would be something you like can have as an extra option for an existing game. Like maybe you want to play a glory game, but you have a head start of 20 extra starting stars. So then the game goes by even faster. You know, you skip through that early phase of the game. Or maybe you don't want to play with the head start though. Like this is kind of like an optional variant you can add. You kind of catch my drift. Here's my personal favorite one. Limited research. Players can have no more than X techs, with X ranging from 3 to 20. This, I think, would be really fun for the late game enthusiasts, because even with like 20 techs, you still have to pick and choose which ones you don't want to have. So this would be a really good one for Might. But also like with the lower amounts of techs, that could be really fun with like side quests. It could be very fun with glory or even contested territory. You could have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, this is probably like the most out there, like weirdest one. So basically every city loses one population every certain amount of turns. So your city's eco is going to gradually go down until all your cities are only making 1 star per turn. Notably, only cities with more than 1 star per turn decay to prevent funny soft locking. Because it would suck if you don't produce any star per turn and don't have units. That'd be kind of sad. So yeah, you'd still like be able to produce some amount of economy, but you'd become a slugfest, especially if you have like X equal to 3 here. So every 3 turns, like all your cities are decaying really fast. This would be really fun with like contested territory or something where you're like trying to fight over these tiles of the map, but you have so few stars to work with. You're trying to like keep your cities afloat and like stopping those from getting too much in the red, but also trying to fight over territory, and it gets all crazy and wacky and wild. Could also be very fun just with Might, like when the game drags out, you just have less and less to work with. You can't build a proper defense to stall, but it's also harder to attack, and it's harder to get like giants as well. It gets all crazy. And then this one I think would also be very fun, especially for Might, where you can only have a certain amount of units. Like especially on like large maps, this could be a lot of fun, because then your unit macro matters a lot more, because like players are pretty likely to hit that unit cap, especially if it's like a really small amount. Like imagine only having like 3 units and you're just like on this like large map or something trying to outmaneuver the opponent, trading cities left and right. Free Spirit would be really good because that's a way you can like pseudo teleport units. It would be pretty silly and pretty fun, I think. And then for how this would like look in the game UI, like this is my absolutely made in 5 minutes, absolutely incredible. But basically like you pick your game mode, and then you pick your variant. I forgot to include like no variant. But yeah, like if you don't want to have any of these as a variant, then you don't have to. But like you can have like your game mode, like say you want to do like glory, but you want to do a small army glory, maybe with only like 20 units max, and you're playing glory to like, I don't know, 13,000 points on a large continents. I forgot to include like player count as well, and if it's a live game or not, and stuff like that. But like you could do all sorts of fun stuff with that. It could, basically like the point is like there's so many different combinations. Instead of it just being glory, might, player count, map type, map size, which even that's still a lot of options, but like suddenly this like multiplies the amount of options by a lot. I graduated high school. Yeah, more options. You don't get bored of the game because it's like, oh, Polytopia sure is boring, but have you tried side quests with limited research on a huge archipelago with Hoodrick. I bet you haven't. I don't know. but you get the idea. There would just be so much to do. It'd be hard to run out of ideas. Maybe this is also my bias, like as a content creator. I always want things to do. And this would be a very easy way to satisfy that. I would literally have like, I could do so many things with this. It'd be so fun. I think you all would enjoy it too, right? Yeah, we're just gonna like look at this for an awkward amount of time. Did you know that only a small percentage of viewers are subscribed to the channel? I am actually really close to 1,000 subscribers, so like even if like only some of you guys that aren't subscribed to the channel, that'd be cool and epic. I would have a larger number of subscribers than if you didn't subscribe to me. It's also kind of funny for like people skipping to the end of the video because they're tired of me yapping and they're like, dang it, he's talking about his subscriber count. I don't know, something funny like that. Yada yada. It's been like 20 minutes. Rant over. Like and subscribe. And have a good one.